Now let's start by discussing about couple of the identity management terminology. So let me start with a very basic example over here. Let's say you, along with your couple of friends, sit for an interview for a multinational organization. And all of you done pretty well in the interview and you guys got selected. The moment you got selected for an company, you received the offer letter from the HR. Now, before you, as a pre-joining formalities, what HR generally used to ask us? HR used to ask us couple of details. First thing, your background. Background in the sense your identification details. Then they will ask you about your qualifications. Then they will ask you about your job history, if applicable. And couple of other details as well. In the identification details, generally they would ask you to provide your ID card, be it your ID card may be voter ID or Aadhaar. Along with that, they will also ask you about, in US basically they used to talk about SSN number. So they used to ask about SSN as well as PAN that is related to your income. Then as part of the qualifications, they generally used to ask you about couple of details like what is your higher qualification, and couple of other details in the higher qualifications, maybe degree, certification, all. Then they will also ask you about the relieving letter from your previous organizations. From your previous organization. Now, the moment you provide all these details to HR, what they are going to do with this information? They are basically responsible for managing the employee's record. They are responsible for managing the employee's record. So HR will basically feed your input to a HRMS system, Now this HRMS system may be a Workday application. The back end of this HRMS may be a Workday application, maybe Fieldglass, maybe your PeopleSoft or EBS or any other software. Okay, so the backend may be anything. Now these HRs are going to basically create the record. They are going to create the record with this information. The moment a record is getting created, your digital identity is getting created. Okay, a digital identity gets created. Okay, so what is an identity? Identity is basically a digital record for a employee. Okay, here the identity may be a real identity, real entity, that is a person, or identity may be a VoIP, voice over iPhone, or any of the company resources. Okay, some service accounts, so those can also be defined as a identity. So there are various types of identities. Okay, so the moment HR feeds the input to this HRMS system, the digital identity for you is getting created. Now this is how the digital identity for you is getting created. Now talking about the next part. Now let's say The moment you supplied all the information and all, you also receive the offer letter, right? In the offer letter, your joining date is mentioned. In the offer letter, we do have a joining date, that when is the reporting time for you for that particular company. So what's your joining date? So on that day, you generally use to report to the organization. And also they will mention the address that you need to report to this particular office at this time. Now let's say your reporting date was 20th of November. Okay, all of your reporting date was 20th of November. So on 20th November, you all have reported to the company. The moment you visit the organization on day one, you will collect couple of details for yourself. Okay, the first thing is ID card. Each and every organization have their own identity card. Okay, so you will receive a identity card. Along with that, you are also going to receive some access to couple of applications. Like on day one, you will get access to mailbox, that what is your email ID for that organization. Okay, along with that, you will your identity, okay, your identity or your account is also getting created to couple of applications. Your account is getting created to couple of applications. So one of them I'm saying about AD, Active Directory. Okay, your account is getting created to Active Directory. Along with that, you will also get access to couple of other things as well. So on day one, you are receiving couple of accesses. Okay, so these couple of accesses on day one when you join the organization, in technical words, also referred as birthright access. Birthright access. What is birthright access? Birthright access is defined by the business people that what should be the minimal level of privilege that the company is going to grant to each and every individual who joins the organization. So the minimal access which you are receiving on day one upon joining the organization, that is referred as birthright access. Now, you got the access to couple of applications. Now, how these things happen in the backend, we'll discuss about those things later. Now, here you might have seen that, okay, you are getting access to these things. Now, every day there are n number of people who are joining the organization, and there are a couple of people who are leaving the organization as well. Now, let's talk about the, let's say now the date is 20th November 2024. Okay, so all these four people who joined the organization on 2020 are now planning to left the organization. Okay, so all the four people are now planning to left the organization. The moment you decide to leave the organization, again the first point of contact for us are going to be the HR of the organization only. The first point of contact for us are HR. Now, the moment you submit your resignation, HR is the first person who is getting notified for this change or this resignation. Now, what HR is going to do? HR will follow up with your manager, and they will have some internal discussion. Basically, HR and manager are going to discuss about the facts that how much dependency you have currently in the current project, and whether the manager want you to retain in the same project or not. Okay, depending upon that, they might come to you for a negotiation. They might come for a negotiation, or else if they see, okay, if the employer wants to leave, let him leave, they will not sit for any kind of negotiation. Okay, now whatever will be the decision, you decided to move on. Okay, the moment you have decided to move on, what HR is going to do? HR is again going to set the termination date for you. HR is going to set the termination date for you Where? In the HRMS system again. That okay, these employees are planning to leave, they have submitted the resignation, and as per the resignation date, okay, let's say you submitted the resignation on 20th of November 2024. Okay, now as per the company policy, you have to serve a notice period of 60 days, let's say. Okay, so what HR is going to do, they will calculate the last working day for the employee from the date of resignation plus 60 days. Okay, so they will give you a date somewhere in the month of January. Okay, that this is the last day of this particular employee, and HR is going to set the termination date where? In the HRMS system. And the moment the termination date arrived on last working day, okay, you need to submit all your belongings, whatever the assets which you were holding for the company, you need to basically return it back to the organization. And then they will basically provide you the relieving letter, and they will perform the full and final settlement. So this is how the organization works. Now, the moment you left the organization, okay, if you try to access the email, let's say after the day when after the last working day, you will receive that you are receiving an error message of invalid username and password, kind of that, because the system will automatically revoke the access for you. Okay, the system, the backend system, there is some black box which is going to revoke all your access from all the target systems where you were holding the access. So all the access has been now revoked. Okay. So this is how the end-to-end things are going to be handled. This is the normal scenario which couple of us myself went through it. Now, where this identity management solution come into the picture? So identity management solution come into the picture over here when we talk about the end-to-end life cycle of the user. When we talk about end-to-end lifecycle management of the user, that thing is basically handled by this identity governance tool, identity management and governance tool. So this black box is nothing but your identity management system. So if you see over here, the day you join the organization till the day you left the organization, whatever access which you have, the moment you left the organization, we need to remove all the access. All those things are going to be managed by this identity management tool. Okay. Now let's discuss about a couple of more interesting things over here. If you have seen over here, we have HRMS system. We have, let's say I'm talking about one application that is AD. Okay. Now this HRMS system is continuously getting updated by whom? By the HR of the organization, right? This is a system which always contain the correct information for each and every employee, because these systems are directly managed by the HR. So this is basically the also referred as truth of source or authoritative source. Authoritative source. Now these systems, let's say this black box I am defining as IIQ, Sailpoint. Okay. Now from these systems, Sailpoint will pull the information. Sailpoint pull the information from these systems and basically maintain the similar kind of record for each and every employee over here. Sailpoint maintain the records of the employee over here locally inside it. Okay. Now these employee records are directly getting updated from here, and this pulling of the data is basically scheduled that every day, let's say in normally if I talk about every 2 hours, a job is running on over here which basically pulls up all the records from here to here and it will update the data. The moment I talk about these target systems, okay, let's say the company have 4 or 5 target system. We have, let's say, cloud-based service now. We have cloud-based Workday and couple of other applications like Active Directory. We have couple of database application and some other applications as well. Now the access to these applications are basically being provided by this Sailpoint system or this identity management system. The access to this target system is basically managed via this Sailpoint system. Now how the access is basically granted? Now the access is granted in 2 different ways over here. One, we just discussed about something called birthright access. The moment I talk about birthright access, those access are automated. The moment the HR is going to create a new record over here, with the help of this syncing process, the employee gets created over here. And with the help of you, we are going to put up some logic over here for this birthright that, okay, where the account needs to be created. So the sale point will automatically create all those records as part of the birthright. So though that process is automatic. Okay. The second way of providing the access is based on request basis. The second way of providing the access is basically based on request basis. Now how that is basically done. Now let's say, just try to assume this real-time scenario. Now many of you might have went through the website of Flipkart in this big billion days, right? So how the entire experience was. Let's say you wanted to purchase a item from the Flipkart. What we generally used to do, we used to log into the Flipkart, and after you logged into the Flipkart, the second step, we used to search the item from the catalog. After you search the item from the catalog, we generally used to see the review, description of the product and all, and then we add the item to cart. After you add the item to cart, what we generally used to do, we used to do checkout. After you perform the checkout, the sale point will basically ask you for payment details, and it will redirect you to payment gateway. Now let's say you did the payment. A response will go to Sailpoint about the status of the payment, whether the payment can be whether the payment is successful or whether the payment is failed. So the Sailpoint is going to receive the acknowledgement in terms of successful or unsuccessful, right? So these two responses are possible. Now let's say Sailpoint received the response of successful from payment gateway. You will see that order placed, and so order will be dispatched to your address within so and so date. If you see the payment is unsuccessful, what Flipkart is going to say? Flipkart is going to say, okay, the order has not been placed. Kindly kindly initiate the payment again. Now, if you want to see this entire system as part of, if you want to basically try to map a relation between this entire shopping cart experience with identity IQ system, you will see a number of similarities over here. Just replace Flipkart with IIQ, that is Sailpoint. Okay. Now let's say user logged into the Sailpoint system and he wanted access to a particular application. He will search the access in the catalog. Okay, so Sailpoint also have the catalog where you can display all the items which are available, all the access which are available. He will submit the access to the cart and submit the request as part of the checkout. Okay, you cannot grant the access to a particular request without any approval, right? Because some access, when you basically need some access, you have to went through couple of approval process. So here, Sailpoint, for each and every item which you are submitting a request, we have already defined, or the Sailpoint, the administrators or the developers has defined the approval process for that item. That the moment you submit the approval, what Sailpoint is going to do, the moment you submit the request, as part of this approval process for that item, it will basically notify the approvals. It is going to notify the approvers. The moment the approvers receive the notification, they are going to take action on that particular request. Either they are going to approve the request or they are going to reject the request. Okay. Depending upon the fact that whether you really need that access as part of your day-to-day activities or whether you don't need the access. It depends upon that. Okay. The moment you approve or reject, the Sailpoint will receive the acknowledgement from the approver, and then the moment it's okay, it has been approved, what Sailpoint is going to do, Sailpoint is going to perform the transaction. Transaction means that Sailpoint will basically going to process your request, and the moment the data will flow out from Sailpoint to a target system, the moment the data will flow out from Sailpoint to a target system, in technical terms, this process is referred as provisioning. So provisioning is the process when you are basically granting or modifying the access for a particular user to a particular target system. So this is basically referred as provisioning. So we discussed about aggregation, we discussed about provisioning. So what is aggregation? When you try to pull the data from this HRMS system to Sailpoint, it is basically in technical terms, it is referred as aggregation. Definitely, when you try to aggregate the data, you need some matching filter, that how you are going to correlate the existing account, how you are going to link the account. So those things comes into the picture, which we'll discuss in the upcoming classes. So this is basically talking about the end-to-end life cycle of the users. Now, if you see over here, whatever access an employee is having to this system, since Sailpoint is acting as a mediator between these target systems, Sailpoint have the footprint. Sailpoint contains the footprints that, okay, this particular employee has access to these systems. And the moment the HR has updated your record with a termination date, again inside Sailpoint, a job is running on which always used to check or refresh the user. The moment it detects, okay, the last working day is today, since the footprints are available, what Sailpoint is going to do, Sailpoint will revoke the access for you from these target systems. So this is how the provisioning and revocation happens. Then these are the terms which are related to user lifecycle. So that's why I mentioned the term over here, identity management. There is one more term which is very much common over here, that is identity governance. Identity governance. As the word itself says, that we are going to govern the identity. We are going to look into the access which the user have, whether the access are within the limits, whether any policy violations are happening, whether you want to comply with any regulations, like for certain organization, they have to comply with certain regulations like SOX, HIPAA, GXP. So they have to basically, then we also have this GDPR. So they have to basically follow these rules and regulations in context with the data, right? So these things also we can basically impose inside the Sailpoint. We can perform the governance on the identities. That's why it is also referred as identity governance tool. Okay. So when Sailpoint came into the existence, it was only providing the solution for governance part. Okay, there was no provisioning and reconciliation part was there. It was only there for governance part. So when Sailpoint came into the picture, it was providing only one module, that is compliance module. As part of the compliance module, you can basically define the policies for your organizations. You can define the risk for your organizations. You can define the certifications. So these were the things which were possible earlier, but for the last couple of years, SailPoint also introduced the feature of this lifecycle management, where the tool is also capable of provisioning the user to target systems and providing them the access to a couple of things. So this is how the things are working on.